consumer pie that China has, which means maybe real serious economic issues. Don't know, but it's going to certainly make the world more volatile. So the Trump administration is going to create volatility. This is one way that that's going to happen. And I would be very concerned to be in companies that need to sell into the U.S. market. So it should retain its value in dollars, but it uses the best advantages of the Bitcoin blockchain. Okay. Is Trump going to change any of that? Yeah, he is. He's going to change it big time. He's going to legitimatize it. We have a rival now rising up in China that could cause a sudden major black swan event. Well, it could have a major impact, right? If Trump follows through on these significant tariff threats, if you will, to China, for instance. I would not want to be owning Chinese companies. I'll tell you that. Their costs are going to go up straight through the roof, and their revenues are going to go down like a brick. And so you're going to see tremendous volatility in companies in other countries that are affected by the proposal of tariffs. And you will see an impact on U.S. companies because the tariff, if we put tariffs on one company, we may see tariffs coming back at us. I think Trump is pretty clever about these kinds of things, and I would expect that he will avoid doing things that severely punish American companies. But I will say that the era of sort of beggaring your neighbor, meaning you're causing your neighbor to lose their job because you're busy buying things that were made in China, that era is rapidly coming to a close. That whole concept of globalism as a way to promote democracies and how democracies don't fight each other turns out to be a mistake. China is more authoritarian than ever and is becoming more dangerous than ever and becoming more progressively expanding its territory. As it starts to lose its population, it probably is going to do this even more. And for those of you who are not aware, China is going off of a demographic cliff and is likely to go from about 1.3 billion today in population to about 500 or 600 million within the next 50 years, or even sooner. And that, of course, is going to shrink the pie, the consumer pie that China has, which means maybe real serious economic issues. Don't know, but it's going to certainly make the world more volatile. So the Trump administration is going to create volatility. This is one way that that's going to happen. And I would be very concerned to be in companies that need to sell into the U.S. market if they are in countries that are in some manner or another at economic war with the U.S. My perspective on Bitcoin is that it's a fascinating piece of technology. Crypto is in general. But it is not what I would consider to be an investment. And unless you wanted to consider a Picasso an investment or gold an investment, I would consider those things a speculation. In other words, or a hedge would be another way to think of it. You are putting money into something that doesn't produce cash flow, a Picasso, say, or gold or silver, and it therefore is dependent on someone else determining what it's worth. And so you just have to hope that it goes up. And obviously, these things can be a very effective hedge. Gold has been a hedge against inflation and war and disruption for thousands of years. And Bitcoin is certainly, I think, taking its position. However, it's been billed as a currency, so we call it cryptocurrency. It is not a currency any more than gold is a currency. Nobody is taking a currency that isn't a good storehouse of value. In other words, when you get paid in something, you want it to be buying stuff relative to what you got paid a week later, a month later, right? You don't want to be taking Bitcoin in and it's at 60, 70,000, 100,000 or whatever. And, a month later you want to spend it and it's at 50. So when there's that kind of volatility going on, it's just not a good idea to have that as a quote currency. Is Trump going to change any of that? Yeah, he is. He's going to change it big time. He's going to legitimatize it. And for those of you who like to speculate on stuff, That might mean that it goes up, or it might not, because maybe the speculators have already bought it up. No idea where Bitcoin goes because there's no relationship to cash flow. I can tell you what I want to pay for a house or a farm or any other kind of business or anything that produces a cash flow, but it's very hard for me to know what to pay for any of these rest of this stuff. Been watching the recent yield curve inversion, the 10-year Treasury versus the 3-month Treasury, which was inverted for 2 years, the longest I've ever seen, and the most inverted on record. It just recently stabilized, and on my chart, a recession triggers soon after it rights itself. Do you watch these sorts of things? I do pay attention to the inversions, and I agree with you, actually. In this case, that's the same work we've done. We use the 10-year, 2-year, but we're looking at the same basic idea, where it has righted itself. It's a process now of seeing when that next thing happens, and it often happens now. And I think we're coming up on a bunch of stuff. First, we're really 15 years into a bull market. That's just way gray hair in the bull market, way old for historical times. Second, we've got a volatile situation in politics. Third, we have way too much debt, and we're the world's reserve currency, so the whole world is nervous. Fourth, we have a rival now rising up in China that could cause a sudden major black swan event. And we have inflation. And so I think there's just a lot of volatility, and I think that it's very easily we could trigger into a recession here. What are your thoughts on how the second Trump administration will impact the overall market in specific sectors? A lot of these Trump questions going on. I can see why, right? It's going to be disruptive, you guys. This group is trying to reduce the size of the regulatory state in order to make business more efficient, in order to reduce the cost of everything. And what they think has happened is that just the natural bloat that happens in bureaucracies as people expand their turf and their kingdoms, that bloat can be cut dramatically, maybe by 50%, maybe by more. So what I think they're trying to do is they're not trying to get rid of services that we need, but they're trying to get rid of bloat that's not necessary to produce those kinds of services. And they're trying to get rid of a lot of regulation. Now, what this means, and whether you like that or not, it means that there's going to be uncertainty as they're going through the process. And that uncertainty is going to rise dramatically. And it's going to have, there's going to be this political element, which is no matter how good a thing is, you're going to have one side or the other fight it, right? Just because we don't want those guys to win, which is really sick kind of structure of the democracy. It's like stupid, but it is the way it is. And as a result, if they're doing something, they're going to have a bunch of people in the street screaming that they shouldn't be doing it, and a whole bunch of lawsuits and a whole bunch of this and that. And I just think we're in for a real bumpy roller coaster ride on the way toward, hopefully, a much more efficient country and much lower regulations and much better fiscal responsibility, hopefully.